You start off with a girl with nothing in her hands and you gotta follow your instincts, kill this guy and the monster attacking him and get a wand that gives you access to Chaos Bolt. Going forwards from there, standard ARPG logic dictates that we kill monsters indiscriminately until we come across a shiny chest, which upon touching gives us a scepter. Now this is where things get a little less standard, as this witch can dual wield weapons. Yeah, I know, only strong muscular dudes are supposed to do that, but bear with the slight feminism here, as you'll see that this scepter grants you the skill of +1 to raise skeleton, and they auto-summon. Now, while you're getting excited to play with your friends, this game throws another curveball in the form of a skill gem, Unearth. This gives us the opportunity to open the skills menu for the first time and place the gem inside it, which grants us the skill. You can now bind this to your hotkeys and start using it to do some bone damage. Now, unlike your on-weapon skills which disappear once you unveil that particular piece of equipment, Unearth will stay with you till you have the skill gem equipped. That's good because we will be using it to kill the Miller. Now, this oversized giant actually takes more damage from Chaos Bolt due to its higher DPS, and thus I focused on using that to start with. However, once you raise some minions, I switched to Unearth because that skill also raises dead minions in the form of scorpions, which are a great meat shield, or actually, this early on, just good forms of damage. Along with all these ARPG elements, you also have some platformer stuff too, with having to dodge roll to avoid giant attacks that this guy does, which, I mean, it's a take it or leave it kind of thing, right? Once he does go down though, we'll be returning to the ARPG elements, as soon as we enter town, we will be rewarded with an uncut skill gem. This now allows us to get any skill that we want across the entire skill tree. I chose Flame Wall because it is going to be a part of my build, and also because it does some pretty decent damage this early on. Now while you are out there doing that damage, you are bound to level up, at which point you can use a point in the passive tree, which is like the character stat screen from Diablo 2, except on steroids. Like Brock Lesnar levels of steroids. Like he's taking shit that makes your fucking head grow. Don't worry though, to simplify things, I'm just gonna be a max roll Andy and just go all damage all the time. That damage will really show in the burrow, especially when you pair it with Fireball, as I leveled up on the way to the Devourer. More of the same with more damage more of the time. Ah yes, the Devourer. The villain that the Chamber of Secrets always deserved but never got. Now this boss fight gives me a good opportunity to talk about potions. You can probably see that I have only one of each. The way they work is that drinking one only empties it a little way, which the game describes as charges. The way to refill these charges is through wells in the town and also by killing monsters. Thus, to balance boss fights, PoE 2 will spawn little critters alongside which you can kill to get some life and mana balance, and that is doubly good for the witch, which gives her some more minions that you can unearth. Good as meat shields only though, since most of your damage will be coming from Fireball. That isn't too great because a lot of the times I felt like Fireball wasn't even hitting him because it wouldn't quite cast where I would want it. It gets the job done nonetheless, and once we get an uncut skill gem from killing this guy, we can use it to get another skill in the form of Contagion, which does chaos damage, which is basically poison damage over time in this game. Now upon returning to town, I got rewarded with an uncut support skill gem. Okay, since things are getting pretty serious, I think this is a good time to mention that I would be building an Infernalist SRS Minion Witch, which is a lot of words, I know, but the basic thing is that my final build is still a ways away. Thus the best thing to do in this case is to take a support gem which you can use later but also will be good at this point, like Persistence for example. This for the moment increases the duration of the critters that I summon using Unearth. I know, exciting right? Woo! In all honesty though, the skill that does the most damage for me at the moment, that being Fireball, is actually going to get weaker as my build takes shape. You'll see. Good Beara fight by the way, shows why you get Fireball nice and early. It does damage. Damage got me XP, which got me a level, which got me, can you guess? More damage. The vicious cycle has begun, folks. I also started using Contagion as a part of my arsenal. This skill is a curse that does chaos damage and it spreads when the infected monster dies. Thus, I usually curse the weakest minion of the pack with Contagion and kill him quickly using Fireball, which cascades the damage down to all the other monsters. Unearth does the job of the cleanup crew, giving me some extra minions to start the next fight with. Against bosses, Contagion gives me a constant dot ticking bomb that I can apply while I whittle them down using my primary damage dealer of Flame Wall. To that effect, I used this level 2 skill gem that I got from Mr. Bramblegast here to level up my Firewall to level 2. Sounds simple enough. While trying to find the red veil, I leveled to level 5, all damage, all the time. I did end up finding the veil where I leveled again, all damage, all the time. The reason you visit the Vale is to gather runes of power. These are actually pretty fun to gather as a witch because you get to kill a bunch of monsters at once, and with contagion and sprawling flame walls, that happens to be this girl's specialty. What she isn't so great at is bosses. Honestly, looking back at this, most of my firewalls don't even end up hitting the boss. Maybe it is because I'm not really used to casting spells without clicking my right mouse button. I blame Diablo 2. Upon dying, the king dude dropped me some good loot, not the least of which was a level 3 skill gem. It is time for the boys. Okay, so a brief tutorial on how minions work in this game. Once you get a skill gem with them in your tree, you can reserve spirit per minion to auto summon them. Spirit is a stat that is clubbed with your mana pool, and you can increase this through gear and stuff. Now the minions that you get from your scepter don't follow these mechanics. They don't cost any spirit, and also you can't summon more than 2 of them at a time. Upon getting my boys the arsonists, I also used one of the support gems I had lying around to get them a support skill. But I couldn't since I didn't have enough dexterity. Also, I couldn't put on this armor plate with 25 to life because I didn't have enough strength. Guess this is what happens when you ignore all the attribute nodes and get all damage all the time. I blame max roll. No biggie though, since a level up is never that far away, as I reached level 7 in the Grim Tangle and I could get an attribute node to get 5 to dexterity. Now this allowed me to use my support gem of martial tempo on my arsonists, which makes them throw their bombs faster. Which, yes, these skeletons throw bombs. They do fire damage, and they do more so if the bombs go past a flame wall first. Thus, I got Fortress using another support gem I was hoarding from earlier to turn my flame wall into a flame fortress, which encases a monster and all but guarantees that they will get hit by the stronger bombs of my arsonists. This, however, does drop my flame wall damage, which is quite a lot at this stage, especially after I found this rare focus which gives me +1 to all spell skills. Thus, I kinda switched this support gem off and on early, not wanting to go all into minions at this stage. I reached level 8 upon entering the moss, and I did go for damage, simply because I didn't need any attribute at this time to particularly further my build. I killed Draven with the minion focus build, and it worked great while the minions were alive, but not so much when they all died. I wonder why. Against this Vife, I used a much different strat of making the most of the spell damage that I got from Firewall. This still allowed the arsonists to light their shots on fire whenever the firewall was placed in close proximity of her, and it also gave me some sort of damage when the minions actually died. I also found a level 3 skill gem on the way on the fight, which I used on my contagion, which was also sitting at level 3. Killing her also gave me the first taste of some high-ish currency in PoE 2 in the form of an exalted orb. This is a fairly lucky drop since it is often in pretty good demand for low-level items. I used the same contagion and firewall plus also a little bit of minion tech against Leklan, and upon killing him got a few rewards. First was an uncut level 3 skill gem, which allowed me to level up Unearthed to level 3. This is also the point in the story where I can talk to this game's Deckard Cain and he can identify all my items instead of me having to buy scrolls. Huzzah! From there, it was on to the hunting grounds with the same attack strats and leveling up to level 10, all damage, all the time. I found and used a level 4 skill gem on the arsonists and killed Tinkerbell over here for another support gem, which I saved for later use. One of the most eye-opening things was shopping at Una and finding a +1 to minion skill scepter with Ray Skeleton implicit. This is obviously pretty huge going forwards, as we will be going all in on minions. That is going to happen against the King of Mists. Despite his heal all the way at the midway point bullshit, you can see how much damage the arsonists are doing with all the plus skills now. What if I tell you that as a reward for this quest, I'm about to get a spirit skill gem, unlocking a skill that will do even more damage than my arsonists do at this stage. We SRSing now, boys. Now, Raging Spirits are these fireballs that arise from your fire cast skills and go absolutely ballistic on the... Yep, there used to be an elite there. Not anymore. You can summon up to 10 of these bad boys at once. Obviously, these becoming my primary offense of choice going forwards, I supported the skill with Execute, making them absolutely lethal against low life monsters, and Fire Infusion, giving them extra fire damage as and when I found the support gems. Now, I had also found my first unique when I killed the King of Mists, but yeah. People when they play minion builds get uniques which give them like mad minion skills and attributes, and I get this. It actually helps my firewall damage at the moment, but that will obviously fizzle out as I focus more on minion damage, especially switching back to the fortress support gem. I also got Spell Cascade, basically making the screen fill with firewalls. Now, these cascaded firewalls don't spawn raging spirits, but they can still ignite my arsonist shot, which is still a pretty good part of my damage. I reached level 13 and got an attribute node on the way to another damage cluster on the passive skill tree. Boy, this game really does love bosses. I'm in like Act 1 and I feel like I have completed all of Diablo 2's worth of bosses, including the Pandemonium event. Good thing is that now I'm pretty good at killing them with the additional damage from SRS. Also, since they cost every time I cast a fireball and stay alive only for a short duration, there really isn't any sleep I ought to lose over the survivability of these in boss fights. Using the support gem, I added some more explosive action to my arsenal with my unearthed minions, and with the quest reward, I got another point into skeletal arsonists. Believe it or not, there will come a point where these will overtake the raging spirits. For now, it's another level up, another attribute node, and would you guess it, another boss. The damage is pretty flipping satisfactory at this point, but I am always pathing towards another damage cluster in the passive tree to keep adding fuel to the fires. Finally, we get to the final act boss, Count Ginor, who gave the order to execute us in the beginning of the game and take him out. Yeah, okay, not so soon. First, we have to kill him in his furry form, which does cold damage for some reason. Yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't think this is just a phase. Once he did perish, he dropped me 2 exalts. Lit. And a bunch of yellows that I just sold since none of them really offered me much in the forms of an upgrade. Now technically Act 1 is over, but I had missed a quest where you retrieve Una's loot from the farmlands, and good thing I went back for it, since from one of the chests I got a Chaos Orb, another great currency item for trading, which is coming soon. With all that, it was time to step into Act 2 and fight stronger monsters on the Red Sands. As an upgrade for myself, I installed a loot filter from Neversink to see and pick up important items. I will link it in the description, and this is pretty much the only loot filter you will ever need to install in PoE 2. With the skill gems, I got a new skill of Pain Offering, which basically sacrifices one of your minions and creates a totem, causing your other minions to have increased DPS, and as support for it, I gave it Expanse to increase its AoE. This is going to be mostly for elites and bosses anyways, so the 6-second cooldown is not really a problem. Speaking of, it had been a couple of seconds and PoE 2 had not thrown a boss my way, so here we go with Wrathbreaker fight, against whom I was struggling a bit. The main problem here was the fact that I had only 4 minions in the skeletons and the arsonists, and it was coming back to bite me. Especially when one of them was turned into a totem, there really wasn't much to body block for me, and thus I spent quite a bit of time trying to stay alive instead of actively casting raging spirits while the revive timer of my skeletons ran down. The problem with this is that the increased skill gems or the passive tree points will not solve this, since increasing the number of minions will require an increase in spirit, and thus focusing that on gear is something I will have to make my priority. For any skill gems I got, I used them to level up my current skills in order of Skeletal Arsonists, Pain Offering, Contagion, Unearthed, and Flame Wall, and kept climbing up the passive tree by using a combination of these skills. Using them, I also took down a fellow engineer. Boy, I wish I could do that to some people in the office, but besides my crazed fantasies, what this fight gives us a glimpse into is the effectiveness of the Pain Offering. The increased attack speed really helps fill the stagger meter of the bosses, which is a pretty busted mechanic in these modern ARPGs, which can be used to finish them off. Using that, I planned to fight Balbala, but her bullshit peekaboo mechanic got the better of me. Like, how the F are you even supposed to figure that one out on your first try? Speaking of bullshit, the Trial of Sekhmet. Okay, so once you kill Balbala, she gives you a coin which you can use to open the trials, which you need to complete to gain ascendancy points. I know, lots of words, but we'll go through them one by one. The trials are a bunch of challenges that you go through, which includes hitting a chalice in a set amount of time, killing a bunch of rares, and then finishing a gauntlet while trying not to take damage, as doing that empties this thing, and you need to finish with at least 1 honor to succeed. And this, I don't know about you, but when I start PoE 2 in the morning, the last thing on my mind is, oh boy, I can't wait to dodge that spike that comes out of the ground on my minion witch that I'm trying to make very strong. Alas, it is what tradition dictates, and Triple G have put this here as well. At some point it just becomes choose the best room type, with escape, chalice, and ritual being good. and Gauntlet and Hourglass being the ones to avoid. It all ends with a boss, which is perfectly okay with me. Having to dodge damage from a boss is something that I'm not going to complain too much about since it is aligned with the basic essence of the game. What does bother me is set damage that I was able to do to him. Yeah, not great. Even after following the build to the T, my minions were dying left and right and I was starting to fall behind, and if you have played any ARPG ever, it is not hard to guess that the gear is the one at fault. Thus, after getting him down and ascending to an Infernalist that I always wanted to be, I took the Hellhound Ascendancy nodes to add some much needed defense to my army. Getting back into the wild, I reached level 24, all damage, all the time. It was time to Big 10 this shiz though, and that happens at level 25. That is because at that level, you get access to the trade market. Okay. Microtransactions. Now, to trade in PoE 2, you need what is called a premium stash tab. The way that you interact with the market is through the official PoE 2 trade website. All the listings that are here are picked automatically from the premium stash tabs across the entire player base. Which, on the one hand, this is great. Coming from Diablo 2 and painfully having to list things on Tradery every time I wanted to sell something, just putting something in my stash and have it show up on the listings is a great quality of life improvement. On the other hand, this game costs money. To charge people more so that they can sell items on the trade market, which I believe is a fundamental part of any ARPG, I don't know, bro. Maybe you can justify it with forums or third-party websites or whatever. I mean, you can still buy things even if you don't have the premium tab, you just need that for selling, but it's something that I'm ideologically against. That being said, early access, bitches. So using my 300 doubloons, I decided to buy a currency tab to keep my currency organized and a premium quad stash tab. Now this is a big ass tab, and the premium part lets me set this tab to be public, which means any item I place in this tab, I can set a price on individually or to the entire stash tab, and players on the market will be able to see my items listed for that price. Now, as you may have guessed, the currency in this game is the currency items, Exalts being the one who run the whole operation. Think of these as the perfect amethyst from Diablo 2, but don't let that downplay their purchasing power. Using a few exalts and a few tips from the build guide that I was following from Maxroll, linked right below the like and subscribe buttons, I was able to garner some pretty good gear, which included the unique shield Oaksborn with 50 spirit and chaos resistance, also the unique body armor Enfolding Dawn, which gave me 100 spirit and 11 all res. With all that additional spirit, I was able to allocate more arsonists, which made my offense, I believe the official term for it is, more lit? Jokes aside, you can probably guess the straight numerical benefit of having 5 arsonists throwing bombs instead of 2. To add to that, I also got a new skill in Flammability, which is a curse which lowers fire resistance. I supported it with Heightened Curse and Inspiration to get lower resistance and lower mana cost on the skill, and bound it to my secondary attack. With the newfound power, killing higher level elites is easier and gets me better rewards faster, like this Lesser Jeweler's Orb, which I can use to increase a skill link for Raging Spirits for any level 2 support gems that I find. In terms of the bossing experience, it wasn't that great, with these two bozos distracting half of my army from the other. Also doesn't help that I was focusing on the big scary one and the arsonists were going ham on the sorcerer, but it is still better. It will get better still as I bought one other piece of equipment, a hat with +1 to minion skills. In retrospect, this is huge. Plus skills on anything but melee are huge, quite akin to Diablo 2 actually, and thus do increase my damage across the board. After gearing up, it was time for leveling up and get another point into an attribute node to make my way to another damage cluster. Next up was the boss from Duke Nukem Manhattan Project. If you know, you know. And you can see that all the elements come into play in this fight. The Pain Offering, increased number of arsonists, Flammability, and Raging Spirits, boosted by that +1 skill point. Still, bossing on this girl is a bit of a chore. Especially here, as towards the tail end of the fight, I was just constantly running out of mana. Thus, after leveling some more, all damage all the time, I decided to fix this problem the only way I know how, by buying shit. I bought Midnight Braid using another Exalt, which gives me 50% damage taken recouped as mana, which is pretty great, and also gives me some all res, which I will never say no to. Another level up before the boss, damage, and against the boss, I had an additional arsonist this time because I was finally able to use the shield I had bought from earlier by meeting some int requirements, and the extra guy really pulled his weight. This is what I was talking about before with the arsonist pulling ahead of the raging spirits. And then...
The Sekma of the Ardura. Bow before your king.
So I heard this voice line like 26 times because, well, I died 25 times after listening to it. This boss is overtuned. I think that's what the kids are calling it these days. Okay, right off the bat, he has this lightning bomb things. These like one-shot me many times. Then we have the fucking sandstorm, and you have to get behind this lady to be safe. Yeah, took a couple of tries to figure that one out. So meanwhile, that kills all your minions, and then his minions start to spawn while you can't move, so that's great. Have to kill them using SRS mostly. Then there is this another random lightning damage bullshit like this, which just... Yep. That's nice, isn't it? And if you get past all that, you get to the second stage where we have tornadoes. Oh, so you're a druid now? Oh, no, but that's not the best part. The best part is how much damage his sword attack does. Yeah. Okay, so it turns out it was my fault mostly. Turns out you need lightning rest for this fight really badly, and mine was, pretty shit. Thus, I took some time off from dying and shopped at some vendors for some lightning res gear. The search feature makes this super easy, and with just a little bit of adjustment, my lightning res was sitting at 36. Just like in D2, the shift from 19 to 36 is pretty huge. I mean, just look at how much his sword attack just did then, and I was actually able to beat him first try after the gear change. This goes to show you how much that really matters. Alright boys, Act 3 and it's jungling time as I poached some more monsters for dinner to reach level 34, all damage, all the time. Now Act 3 is where I got some of the biggest boosts in damage yet from skill gems. Thus to implement this I got the requisite intelligence node timely, and my skill priority went arsonists, flammability, pain offering, flame wall. You can tell against Junior Kong that the upgrades are feeling nice, and killing him feels nice too since you get 2 free passive skill points which you can spend on damage. And also this node. Please get this node. This reduces the spirit cost of your minions, and it might let you get enough free spirit to get another arsonist. The skill gem upgrades weren't quite done yet as I killed another elite which got me a level 2 support gem. This I can use to get better supports for my raging spirits like feeding, frenzy, and fire penetration, both being huge damage upgrades going forwards. Of course, no upgrade is quite like a direct upgrade as I got a level 9 spirit gem a bit further on. I don't know if you've been keeping track, but this is the first spirit gem that I've found since Act 1, and it takes my raging spirits from level 4 to level 9, a colossal upgrade. I honestly felt like I was walking down the jungle after that one, racking up monsters and levels. More damage please, thank you very much. I think it has finally addressed our bossing worries as well boys. That is the first time that I've seen that happen to a boss. Can't lie, that felt good. Even in the middle when Buckbeak was going ham on my arsonists and they were dying left and right and center, the raging spirits kept the assault on with them being non-targetable, and thus I think we are making some strides toward what this build is really capable of here. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has always been good against large mobs, and a demonstration of that is going to be in the Trial of Chaos. Ah yes, Ascendancies. Okay, this one is better because, well, for one, it doesn't have spikes coming out of the ground and there is no honor system. All you have to do is simply kill monsters, which feels a lot better. The gimmick for this facility though is that before each room you are given these curses which carry with you throughout the facility. The first time round I took this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and I don't know, I guess I got pretty lucky and made my way to the boss, only to die to its, I don't even know what that attack was. Cool. Second time on though, dude, look at these choices. The first one is basically an honor system, F no. Second reduces my life and mana recovery by 40%, no. And finally we have the pyramid beams, so I was like, okay, I can take on the pyramid beams. I could not take on the pyramid beams. They were like these freaking lasers that spun around and did lightning damage, wiped out all my minions like they were made out of sand, and then the elites basically had a field day with me. Third time thus was the charm. Also, can't help but notice that this is a different boss. Anywho, at least we do pretty well on these guys now damage wise, so nothing to fret. Second ascendancy, done. I took Altered Flesh, which covers 20% of lightning and cold damage to fire damage and physical to chaos damage. Since I knew I was going going to be going down this route, I prepared my gear in this fashion as well, stacking fire and chaos res wherever I could to keep them at a comfortable level. Other than that, this act goes all over the place, from the jungle to draining an underground city to a literal cesspool where the witch says one of the most relatable dialogues ever.
I need more mushrooms.
And then we beat up the Queen of Filth. That lets us into the Temple of Cope, although that performance in the second trial should have been enough for that. Kill some religious nut there and then travel across time. I don't see anything incoherent about that sentence, do you? Once we're in the past, we fight the Val, which includes this fight. Yeah, this one's fair, isn't it? She has a freaking army on her side. Oh wait, seriously though, the chaos damage goes crazy here from these guys' missiles, so just kill her faster next time. Seriously, that is the thing that actually ended up working for me. Other than bosses, this girl is also really good at walking down large packs of monsters like nothing. Just look at her across this strait. I mostly do not waste my time with flammability or pain offerings in situations like this. Here it is simply casting fireballs and unearth occasionally to increase the amount of minions which can body block not only for my witch, but also for my other minions which do damage. Every bit counts, as this is the final area of the campaign and you can see that their survivability is pretty good. Also, something I forgot to mention was I did the quest deep in the jungle where you kill a really psycho lady and she gives you like 40 spirit, which allowed me to get an extra arsonist. Every last bit counts as I took on the final boss of the campaign. Boss fights for this girl have come a long way, especially once that pain offering goes up. What really needs to go a long way from this game is the fact that even after losing every bit of its HP, bosses still do damage. What the hell, Triple G? Oh good, part 2 of the boss. What could be better? It's okay, I beat the shit out of him anyways. Noobs will tell you that you need lightning res against this guy, but when you do this much damage, Noobs will tell you that you need lightning res against this guy, but when you do this much damage, you dictate what is needed and what isn't. Thus, with the campaign complete, there is but one thing left to do: start Nightmare. Oh yes, we are back in this place again. But of course, monsters are much stronger now, and there are elites everywhere giving more experience and loot than before. I actually quite like that Triple G borrowed this from the Diablo 2 formula. Nightmare is always my favorite difficulty in that game too, since nothing beats building a really strong character and then going back to the areas where you struggled earlier and then absolutely shitting on them with all new trinkets. Now moving on up in the world, I made my first sale on the trade market. Actually, this was a step down since I had to return to normal to do this, and while I was here, I decided to complete any side quests that I had left. You should do this too for some general housekeeping, or maybe because you might bing something like this. Well, this is a huge upgrade. Knew that subscription to the streamer server will be worth it. I mean, I was planning on getting juiced for the new difficulty anyways, because that just makes sense, right? So I ended up with this thing, which gives me +3 to minion skills and also some other stuff. Attack speed, I guess, but that minion skill, dude, that is far and beyond the most important stat that I can get, period. Getting +3 at this stage is really good. I was operating with 0 before on my weapon, and thus this was an instant upgrade. Even if the base is stoic, which means that the implicit skill is discipline, which is an aura which grants energy shield to my minions. What you ideally want is a rattling scepter, the thing that I had before, because it gives you skeletal warriors for free. I honestly don't think it's that bad. Minion skills definitely matter more, and thus we're going to go ahead with this thing and we'll be just fine. For my hat, I bought this with fire res, life, mana, energy shield, and crucially +2 to minion skills, all for 1 exalt. My shield is still this unique thing from earlier, and this actually is best in slot, simply because spirit and chaos res are stats that are important throughout the campaign and beyond. Then I bought this. Amulets with minion skills and spirit go for divine orbs, and thus I settled for one without spirit. Minion skills are definitely more important IMO, and this one gives me some more cold res and mana as well. That I needed since my chess piece takes away the mana that I would get from all the int nodes that I have in my passive tree, but I gotta keep it since 100 spirit is too good to give up at this stage. For the rings, yes, we have an experiment. If you're new to this game, and even if you aren't, you may be thinking, why do you buy all your gear instead of crafting it on your own? Allow me to demonstrate. I am going to take this perfectly fine ring with chaos res and life and try to build on it. 1 regal orb and 1 exalt. And it's gone. I mean, it's fine. That mana is a somewhat useful addition, or, you know, I could spend 1 exalt and get something like this. As long as the crafting in this game it comes down to just exalt it and pray, bro, I'll advise sticking to the market for the duration of the campaign at least. The second ring. Okay, this is something that I did craft. Huge fire res, mana, and rarity. pretty decent. For my shoes, I bought these unique ones with movement speed and huge lightning res because I was in need of exactly those two stats in those quantities. For my gloves, I also spent my exalt on some dual res gloves with a little bit of cheeky life and mana. My belt, I've kept the same for now to see how we do for mana. Now what isn't the same are my skills. Well, some of them. The Infernal Hound is the same, being a good boy by being my meat shield, having high resistances, and also sticking around longer than I can imagine. Unearth is still the same, with these giving me some minions that I will need more than ever now to body block and disrupt now that I've lost my skeletal warriors. Right. Flame Wall. So I removed Spell Cascade from this and put on Arcane Tempo as well. Reason being that I feel casting fewer firewalls will incentivize me to cast this faster, which will increase the average number of Raging Spirits on the screen, which is good for damage. Essence Drain is... I don't know why I have it here, I really don't use it at all. That is because almost all my damage comes from these guys. I can get 7 with my current level of Spirit, and with Martial Tempo, Fire Infusion, and Scatter Shot, these guys simply murder. Raging Spirits do more of the same with Execute, Fire Penetration, and Feeding Frenzy as their choice of supports. Pain Offering has Expanse and Persistence for it to last longer and spread further. Finally, Flammability with Inspiration and Heightened Curse, giving me manageable mana cost and a higher effect. The next Jeweler's Orb I find, I'm using on this curse though and putting Spell Cascade on it because I believe I'll be using this on Trash Elites more, and Spell Cascade will make it easier to hit them, especially while in transit. My res looks... well, let's be honest, all over the place, but the attention to fire and chaos is warranted because of the ascendancy I took earlier. In terms of DPS, that is difficult to put in a number in the case of a minion witch, and thus I just went to the burrow to check out if this build works. And guys, I think the build works. Wait, let's just be sure by yeah, no. I really think the build is just fine, guys. It is only going to get worse from here for these poor monsters as I search up some more minion damage nodes on the passive tree and find higher level skill gems. Now since damage was no thing, I turned my focus on some more defensive based skills like Grim Feast. This thing gives dying monsters and minions a chance to drop Grim Remnants, which you can auto pick up like gold, and they will replenish 60 energy shield. Only they will do more than that, as if your energy shield meter fills up, it will overflow to almost twice its size, which is nuts. Obviously the real ROI on this skill is when you have really good ES base. 400 is a general good recommended minimum, but since I had Spirit to spare, I decided to go for it here anyways to get some extra padding. Now since this is a Spirit gem, it did require to allocate some of the reservation from my Arsonists to the Feast gem, but I think I will be fine damage wise based on past evidence. Now that I can just recoup my survivability using the Grim Remnants that fall upon the death of monsters, I feel a lot more comfortable just plowing through packs, which does increase my clearing speed through trash as well. As for bosses, well, we know all what that's like, don't we? Yep, already dead but still can swing and damage me. Love that, Triple G. Favorite feature, not bug of the game so far. The other being how shit the uniques are. Or at least, you know, the ones that I find, I guess. Wouldn't mind these becoming rarer and, you know, usefuler. I reached level 53 in the desert and got a minion life node while en route to another minion damage cluster. Okay, so Wrathbreaker. This guy is kind of mean. Not a lot of monsters gave me as much grief, but he did kill me twice. He's like that meme where the other bosses are like derpy doges and this guy is like the really strong derpy doge. What ended up working here, as you can see, was taking out his sniper stooges, which allowed me and the minions to go full ham on him and kill him before he could do the opposite. That's the name of the game, and from that I think you can deduce that survivability of my witch is the current bottleneck of my build, mainly because it is the part of my build that I'm not actively improving. Putting stat points in strength does give you more life, but since most of my attributes when allocated go into int mainly to get the next tier of skill gems, thus that also isn't really a reliable solution. Upon reaching level 55, I did look around for some energy shield nodes on the passive tree. Honestly, once you get into a character this far in, some of the most fun that you can have is just by scrolling the passive tree and planning your path to fix the problems that you have. I love the complexity of it, and I love the search feature, which doesn't make things more cumbersome and complicated than they have to be. In the end, I concluded that since it's not like the survivability issue is that omnipresent and urgent. Thus, I chose the engineer way of dealing with it, which is leaving it till it becomes urgent. Now, not everything in Nightmare is a replay of the stuff that happened in normal. For instance, when we kill Balbala in Act 2, we don't get a chance to ascend. She does drop a Jinn Barrier, but it will not give you ascendancy points unless it is level 60 plus, which most likely it won't be at this stage of the game. Thus, you can just move on and go for the third ascendancy when you find the level 60 plus coin later in the game. Our next big upgrade comes in the Lost City, where I found a level 3 support gem. This is where the dog will start to prove its worth. As if we didn't have enough buffs, fire exposure adds further reduction of enemy resistance when the dog ignites them. This is best when paired with Strip Away, a level 2 support skill, which basically gives a buff to the buff that is fire exposure. For my next level 3 support gem, I got Heft for the Arsonist because apparently it is busted and I will never be opposed to some increased bust. Whoever will be. Now, one mistake that I made was, well, I found a Greater Jeweler's Orb and yeah, I know. Well, I know now. I obviously didn't know then. So, to give a bit of a background, the Greater Jeweler's Orb increases the number of sockets in a skill gem from 3 to 4. You either want to currency exchange it for equivalent exalts or use it on a spirit gem. That is because you can actually val regular skill gems to get 4 sockets on them, thereby bypassing the use of this incredibly rare piece of currency. You can also val spirit gems as well, but if you've been paying attention, spirit gems are a lot rarer than regular gems, thus making them harder to get the current val rolls on. Everyone is new to the game at some point and yeah, learn from my mistakes, boys. Either sell the Greater Jeweler's Orb or save them for spirit gems, since those are much rarer. This isn't catastrophic or anything, this is basically just splitting hairs with min-max jargon. The build's fine, guys. The build is still just fine. I reached level 57 in the pits, all damage, all the time. Now, to increase that damage a bit further, I chose a little bit of an unintuitive approach by getting a skeletal storm mage using the next level 13 skill gem I found. Now, don't worry, I'm not pivoting from fire to lightning at this stage of the game. Rather, to balance all the elements, Triple G have added some intrinsic effects attached to each of them. Cold obviously freezes and is godly for crowd control. Fire can cause ignition, which is a damage over time effect. For lightning, you have the ability to shock, which makes them take 20% more damage, which is, yeah, that's just free damage. Thus, taking off Grim Feast at this stage made sense, since due to my lackluster ES base, it wasn't like it was adding much at this point anyways. For supports, I used Conduction, which increases that chance to shock, which is an obvious must-have. I also used 2 level 3 support gems when I eventually got them, giving him Overcharge, which increases the damage increase I get from shock, but reduces the shock duration. This is then offset by Stormfire, which doesn't let shocks expire on ignited enemies, which is going to be all the enemies thanks to my firewalls. In terms of my gear, even though my gear is pretty good, I was continuously doing some basic crafting using orbs of transmutation and augmentation, mostly on bases that I would like to use, like rattling scepters and solar amulets. Of course, I don't need to tell you that bosses aren't even able to finish their intros by the time they're already dead. With this much damage flying in, it honestly doesn't behoove me to get anything but more minion damage because everything else seems irrelevant. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but a little bit. I would definitely like some survivability, especially for what was about to come.
The Sekma of the Ardura. Bow before your king.
Now, thankfully, my PTSD didn't manifest in any real form since, well, he really didn't have that much time to damage me. My lightning res is not the greatest, but you know what is great? My minion's ability to stagger and destroy bosses, and that seems to be the only thing that matters anymore. Who would have thunk it? Now, upon getting to Act 3, I decided to clean up my passive tree a little bit. Earlier on, I had taken these attribute nodes wherever I needed them. I refunded these and got instead some much more powerful int nodes available up the tree, basically making it so that I don't have to worry about int for a while now. Another thing I did in Act 3, and you should also, is the side quest where you kill the sister in the bog. Only she can be a little irritating to start. Dude, what are you doing? Just stand in one place and kneel over like all the other bosses. Why you gotta make a show of something whose result is already known? To be fair, the rewards are well worth it because you get a relic which gives you 40 to max spirit and a level 14 spirit gem. Huge damage increase right there. Now, since it seemed to me that my damage was doing fine, in fact, with this, I had taken every single damage node there is on the passive tree. I think it was finally time to start pumping energy shield for that survivability. That is because going forwards, we are going to be running maps, something you only have one shot to complete. If you die, you lose the map forever. You'll drop your first one around Act 3, and these will contain monsters that will be dangerous and at high levels, thus balancing survivability and damage will be key. Thus more into energy shield I pumped as I reached level 61. I finished the Corpse Snake run-up quest and took the Chaos Res Vial from Mala, another boost to my survivability which is much needed. Now since I was going down the energy shield route, I took some time to root my pathing and started taking these 2 straight bonuses to ES, boosting the base first and then afterwards working on the multipliers. Now to take it up to 11, I did find a body armor at the vendors which I thought had a potential to be something great, thus I crafted on it a little and it turned out to be average, I guess. The energy shield is great, don't get me wrong, this does double it, and with Grim Feast it would take me a lot tankier, but I will be losing 2 arsonists because of that spirit loss from my current unique. For now, I decided to stay with the superior damage, but good to know that this is a direction that we can take towards the future. For now, more carnage and more points into energy shield. I took the carnage to this dude who is apparently made from molten gold. I don't know, bro. Shouldn't you do better against fire damage if your lore is more accurate? Speaking of, while finding the dude, I found something which actually sells. For quite a lot actually. A Jin Barrier with area level 62. As stated earlier, for the 3rd Ascendancy you need one of these at level 60 plus, and this one will indeed grant the Ascendancy points. Thus, with my ignorant little brain, I went back to the Trial of Sekimas. So the twist this time is that I need to beat this place not once, but 3 times in a row. And of course, to triple the fun, my honor carries over every time I progress. Now by this point, I had become pretty good at identifying bad rooms from good. And to try to avoid them, I completed the first floor of the trials with full honor. And then... I cannot even blame this on the trial because all that was going fine. I did have full honor and I was more than halfway done with this floor as well. I just grossly underestimated how bad my lightning res was. I checked later and I was sitting at like 19%, and combined with the fact that I had to stay away from this guy and I had no energy shield because of a bane. Yeah, of course it was at this point I checked the price of the coin I had just spent unsuccessfully, so that was a good revelation. All good though. The playthrough is still young and I still gotta finish the campaign, so back there I went, leveling up and getting some more attribute points. That was to wield the only good thing to come out of that trial, this Shrine Scepter. Now this scepter is one with an even more useless implicit than my current one, but it has +4 to minion skills and increased spirit. We gotta exalt it, bro. Yep. That's crafting in PoE 2 for you. Just slam an exalt into it. For those of you who missed it, the increased spirit went from 19 to 50, which means Grim Feast can come back on, boys. And I can even support it with clarity, which gives me some much needed mana regen. Thus from here on out, I could basically just bump bitches. I don't even care that there are monsters coming from me. No. I'm coming for them. I could literally walk through them, lay down firewalls, and come out with more HP than I went in with, thanks to the energy shield overflow from Grim Feast. Doriani is already dead, he just doesn't know it yet. Now yes, lightning res can be important for this fight. It isn't really if you don't end up getting hit. Now Doriani of course doesn't die here, since he is the one who will take us into the endgame. After the campaign, you will unlock the Zigzagoon Refuge on the map. This houses the map device where you can use those tier 1 maps that you found earlier and start exploring the Atlas. Now this video is getting pretty long, so I will just give you a little taste of the endgame. Definitely let me know if you want to see more in the future videos, and I will do my best to accommodate. But for now, the Atlas is basically this huge place with different types of maps, which are basically slightly altered versions of the areas of the game. To access these maps, you place waystones in them and you can travel to the map like 6 times. Of course, if you die once in a map, you also die in real life. Okay, no, but you do lose your waystone forever. Thus, I started doing some tier 1 maps and also completing the Cataclysm's Wake side quest along with it. During my tier 1 maps, I found these wrapped sandals that sold for 2 exalts, for some reason. Still don't really understand uniques in this game. I also sold these gloves for 2 exalts. These are pretty nice to be fair, but still not as good as mine, which is why I let these go. I also found this baller amulet with nice spirit, energy shield, res, but only +1 to minion skills, but instead of equipping it, I valved it, because I'm just so smart. Other than that, these are a good source of currency with a steady inflow of regals, alchemies, and exalts. It wasn't long before I was standing before my first tower. As far as the mapping experience goes, these are pretty lame. They're quite short and surprisingly sparse compared to other maps. But what they do allow you to do once you reach the top is see more of the atlas and also place a tablet in them, which is another item that drops from these maps, which basically gives some of the maps in the radius of the tower some special abilities. The system is fine, not exactly intuitive since I'm completing maps to get to the tower without the special abilities, and then I'm basically just chasing another tower, so I'm not really taking advantage of my tablet. I don't know. I'm not exactly a radical thinker when I say that the endgame needs to be thought more about for this game, especially since it has PoE 1 to stand up to, but let me be honest, it is fun, especially when you start doing some of the higher tier maps. It is very rewarding and incredibly engaging for what relatively little content we have for now. That includes the Atlas passive tree. Once I completed 10 tier 1 maps, I got 2 Atlas passive skill points which I spent on Rarity to get to Constant Crossroads, which I believe is the consensus best first node to get, as higher tier maps is some of the best ways to gain XP and currency and is honestly the most fun way to play the game. Other than that, it was more monster killing and going deep into energy shield. I steadily moved up the map hierarchy, leveling up my witch and my skills in the process as well. Most of the trades that I made, I'm realizing now, were quite low level. I don't think I earned or spent more than 2 exalts on any trade, and I think that that is something I should be more aggressive with in the future. Actually, that is a lie, since the very next trade I did was worth 5 exalts. Yep, I had had enough of holding myself back with my body armor. I mean, don't get me wrong, 100 spirit is still great, but I was really losing out on energy shield, mana, resistances, and a bunch of other stats that this powerful slot can wield. Thus, I finally took a punt at it by sacrificing 1 arsonist but gaining a ton of survivability in its place. With that survivability, I could complete higher tier maps. I think I went as high as tier 9, and because of that, ended up getting a divine orb drop. That, for reference, is basically equivalent to a high rune in the PoE universe. I'm pretty sure this is basically an Ohm rune. Any Bahrams in chat to confirm that? Feel like he's the guy for this. So yeah, tier 9 maps. They are great and I was quite comfortable clearing them as well. Sure, I died to the odd BS map mechanic, but for the most part, it was quite natural and really fun. Except for the Valve Factory. Fuck the Valve Factory. All my homies hate the Valve Factory. No, seriously, they do. Other than maps, I also cleared a hideout for myself and decorated it with one thing and one thing in mind: peak efficiency. Those are the personality traits with which I get all the ladies, my friends. All told, I think I ended my mapping journey at around level 80, and you can see, I think this is a tier 11 map that I'm doing. I'm simply walking down monsters, simply laying down firewalls and letting the minions take the wheel. All the while my ES is being recuperated from the Grim Tangles and I'm sitting at a very comfortable HP to take on elites and bank all that currency. Of course, all of this is possible because of the focus of my build being damage and energy shield and my skills powering up my minions. Thus, I guess there isn't much left to do but take revenge. Now, with much better lightning rest than before, I used one of these area level 71 coins I found earlier and went for my Ascendancy. For the relics, I believe the best route to go is honor and increased honor resistance. Both are godly and you want to stuff as many of those in this Tetris maze. To start off, I had to face an hourglass room. After a recent patch, I think hourglass has officially overtaken Gauntlet as the worst room. You're pretty much guaranteed damage in here because there are monsters coming from all 5 angles and they've put the bloody ground spikes in this room as well, because that is what we all wanted, right? More ground spikes. Still, with my honor high, I went to the second selection. Things I looked for here were avoiding crippling banes like removal of energy shield, monsters having like 25% increased movement speed, anything else that sounds horrible. Also, I like to keep options like ritual, escape, and chalice open for the room after, since those are pretty much the only rooms I want to do. Oh my god, it's the fucking ground spikes again! Triple G! So basically any room they want to buff, they just add these fucks to the room. Maybe take a hint from the fact that we don't want to face them. Good lord. Ritual used to be so good. One firewall down and everything would die, but nope, had to add these things in there to make it more quote-unquote challenging. Okay, I'm bitching too much now. Escape is still fine, and I guess the old ritual rooms do exist. They just buffed the multiple small ones. Now here's an example of where doing Gauntlet was actually better than the alternative. This Chalice room was giving me a Bane, which was basically going to not allow me to see what room was going to be for pretty much the entire rest of the run. Thus I weighed my odds and figured doing one Gauntlet now would be better than doing 50 later when I can't see what room type I'm selecting. Gauntlet seems to have been nerfed a little bit, but I still hate it with every fiber of my being. This is not what an ARPG is supposed to be, fam. After getting a pretty sick boon from the merchant, I defeated the unique Gothic blade from Diablo 2 and moved on to part 2 of the trials. Here too, the strat was the same. Go for good rooms like Chalice unless one of them has a crippling Bane or ultimately leads you into a corner. All the while trying to keep your honor at a healthy enough level, I took down the level 2 boss, or the level 2 bosses, I should say. Nice loot, bros. To start out level 3, I actually got a very good boon in the form of 40 increased movement speed and zoomed through. Only I got into a bit of a pinch near the end. See, this is what I was talking about backing yourself into a corner. I was sitting at like 1700 honor, which already meant that I had been playing like shit and hadn't really mapped this well by taking the honor refilling shrines at the right intervals, but on top of that, that last room that I left for myself was an hourglass. Hourglass in level 3 has this special property. It is filled with dicks. Literally, it's just these awful maggots that go in and out of the ground and you have no idea whether you should stand still because he might come out right out of your ass or move around because he will still come out right out of your ass. I think I'm not exaggerating when I say that I really cut it close on this room. Thankfully the reward was an honor restore shrine, but it only left me with 1400 odd honor for the final boss, and I was thinking, oh boss? I'm good at that, just lay down 2 fireballs and he'll be dead, right? Right? He won't turn into an absolute freaking nightmare and start going into the ground and then coming out at random intervals? Good God, what have I done to deserve this? But still, the boys were doing a bang-up job and they got him down. Only, he lived at 1 HP. And then he started doing the backflips again. And I was like, this is still fine. 700 honor? 300 honor? And there. And of course, he died as soon as I did. So the Trial of Chaos. Yeah, after screaming at my monitor for like 10 minutes, I still feel like screaming now that I've been reminded of that BS. It was time to move on. I went on the trade market and bought some of the inscribed ultimatums. You need these at level 75 plus for the 3rd Ascendancy, and I bought 3 of the level 76 ones for 3 Chaos Orbs, which I think is a banger deal, but hopefully I will not need to use all 3 of them. Now the good thing about the Trial of Chaos is that you don't need to worry about any honor or any of that other BS in this channel. It is straight killing monsters and not dying. The bad thing about the Trial of Chaos are the Banes. Now a general good strat that I use while completing this challenge is that I try to avoid any Banes that add any environmental effects like the Pyramid Beams of Doom from earlier. Thus things like monsters cannot be slowed is a perfect first choice, since it is not like my build does any CC anyways and I can easily clear the monsters in room 1. For challenge 2 I had 2 environmental effects and a buff to increase the resistances of monsters. I am well fine with that. The monsters already die to all my attacks in 2 seconds. It will really not be the end of the world if they die in 3 seconds instead, as I completed the ritual room as well. For the 3rd main I took Entangling Vines. It doesn't really matter what effects occur when monsters hit me if they die before hitting me at all, am I right? Thus I was able to escort the statue easily across room 3. Wait, am I playing Diablo 4 all of a sudden? Room 4 is a boss room, so this bane of rare monsters really won't affect this one, but I don't mind that for the rest of the room since that will mean increased loot. This is actually quite similar to a node that I was chasing in the Atlas passive tree, so it is funny to get this as a bane. This boss though, oh my god, what a snooze fest of a fight. Guys, the boss running away mid-fight and me having to chase it is not a fun mechanic. It wasn't fun with Tinkerbell and it wasn't fun with the dragon and it's not fun with this dragon either. Be careful of a scorched earth attack though, that hurts. After getting him down, I took the Bane in room 5 which increases chaos damage. Same principle as before. It doesn't matter what damage they do, they don't really get to damage me that often anyways. For round 6, I had to get an environmental alteration since those were the only choices I had. Thankfully, burning turrets is the tamest of the lot as it just shoots some firebolts at you at intervals which do inconsequential damage while you transport Valcors to altars. Now those do consequential damage, so be quick about that. Now, next was another boss room, and the choices here weren't great. I went for increased chaos damage simply because I didn't want to reduce the damage against bosses. Of course, the Buckbeak fight really made me feel silly because, as it turns out, I did have a little bit of a margin to give when it comes to doing reduced damage to bosses and being just fine. Next up, I took deadly monsters, which tripled their crit rate. That is fine, definitely better than the other two choices, one of which was a res penalty. That is much more detrimental as far as I'm concerned. Round 9 gave me a bit of a break with 3 pretty tolerable effects, and the most tolerable of the 3 was Time Paradox, which reduced the effects of buffs and increased the timing of debuffs. So basically just my normal build doing my normal build things, aka destroying monsters. Round 10 took away that break and then some, giving me 3 devastating environmental effects to choose from. I looked at my res and took the one that summoned lightning storms, but as it turns out, it didn't really matter. That is because I was fighting Buckbeak II, and this boss has this really cool thing where sometimes it would just turn into this invulnerable tornado and, you know, do this to you. Now, okay, I'm not saying I'm good at this video game. I'm not even saying that I'm good at any video game. But that is some bullshit right there. Now you might think I'm about to put up some Reddit posts to justify my dying, and you're damn right, because holy shit, Triple G, why do you guys want people to hate this game? Dude, these trials, I feel like it is them actively asking people to hate the game. It's not challenging, guys, if it is unfair as fuck. So yeah, I died again, and then once more, and wow, who saw that coming? I don't know, by this point I was a broken man, basically speedrunning through the trial but knowing that it won't matter because Buckbeak II was just going to destroy me anyways. Except, you are seeing this video, which means that eventually, somehow, with no strat whatsoever, spamming buttons and just getting lucky that he didn't turn into the tornado that time, I got through. They want us to hate the game. I'm convinced. There is no other explanation. Unfortunately, I had taken this environmental bane of the Rings of Doom earlier, thus I had to be a little careful in the rest of the rooms, but finally, my room 10 boss was Buckbeak I, and him? Yeah, he's a pushover because, of course he is. I don't care, dude. Just give me the Ascendancy points. 2 more Arsonists. And what did it cost me? I now hate this game. Subscribe for more. Yours truly, with love.